Good morning, dear student. This is Mr. Ishitu Tasfaye, your biology teacher. Welcome to Grade 12 Biology Week 12 lesson. Today's lesson is Chapter 35, Lesson 1, Infectious Disease. Your textbook page 1010 to 1013. Lesson objective. At the end of today's lesson, you should be able to identify the causes of infectious disease and explain how infectious diseases are spread. Causes of infectious disease. Before we discuss causes of infectious disease, it is important to know what infectious disease is. Infectious disease is a type of disease that can pass from one organism to another. Now, what causes infectious disease? Well, infectious disease can be caused by viruses, bacteria, fungi, single-celled eukaryotes or protists, and parasitic worms. According to Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, infectious diseases occur when microorganisms cause physiological changes that disrupt normal body functions. In old days, microorganisms were commonly called germs, so this conclusion was called the germ theory of disease. Unfortunately, the word germ has no biological meaning in modern-day biology. Agents of infectious disease. Infectious diseases are caused by pathogens, organisms that invade the body and disrupt its normal function. In other terms, pathogens are the agents or causes of disease. As we have already seen, examples of pathogens are viruses, bacteria, protists, fungi, and parasitic worms. Now let's look at the agents of infectious disease a little bit in detail and give examples of some of the most common diseases they are responsible for. The first one are viruses. Viruses, as we have seen in chapter 20 lesson 1, are non-living, replicate by inserting their genetic material into a host cell and taking over many of the host cell's activities. The diseases that viruses cause include common cold, influenza, chickenpox, and warts. Then we have bacteria. Bacteria, as we have seen in chapter 20, lesson 2, cause disease to other organisms either by breaking down the tissues of an infected organism for food or by releasing toxins that interfere with normal activity in the host. Some of the diseases they cause include streptococcus infections, diphtheria, botulism, and anthrax. At the third place, we have fungi. Fungi cause infections on the surface of the skin, mouth, throat, fingernails, and toenails. And also they cause dangerous infections that may spread from lungs to other organs. The diseases that fungi cause include athlete's foot, ringworm, thrush, and so on. Then protists. Protists are single-celled eukaryotes that may infect people through contaminated water and insect bites. They take nutrients from their host, most inflict damage to cells and tissues. Some of the disease protists cause include Giardia intestinalis, African sleeping sickness, malaria, and etc. We have finally parasitic worms. Parasitic worms are, as the name indicates, parasites that infect humans, and they are worm-like. They may enter through the mouth, nose, anus, or skin. Most reside in the intestinal tract where they absorb nutrients from the host. Some of the diseases that they cause include trichinosis, schistosomiasis, hookworm, and elephantiasis. Koch's postulates. What are Koch's postulates? Koch's studies with bacteria led him to develop rules for identifying the microorganism that causes a specific disease. These rules are collectively called Koch postulates. Rule number 1. The pathogen must always be found in the body of a sick organism and should not be found in a healthy one. Rule number 2. The pathogen must be isolated and grown in the laboratory in pure culture. And number 3. When the cultured pathogens are introduced into a healthy host, they should cause the same disease that infected the original host. And finally, The injected pathogen must be isolated from the second host, and it should be identical to the original pathogen. Symbionts versus pathogens. Most microorganisms that live and grow in the human body are symbionts that are either harmless or actually beneficial. Yeast and bacteria that grow in the mouth and throat without causing any trouble. Bacteria in the large intestine help with digestion and produce some of the most important vitamins. So these organisms, such as bacteria that live in the intestine, yeast that grow in the mouth and throat, are good guys that obtain nutrients, grow, and reproduce without disrupting normal body functions. On the other hand, the pathogens are bad guys that cause problems in various ways. Some viruses and bacteria directly destroy the cells of their host. Other bacteria and single-celled parasites release poisons that kill the host cells or interfere with their normal functions. Parasitic worms may block blood flow through the blood vessels or organs, take up the host nutrients, or disrupt other body functions. Now let us turn our attention to how diseases spread. How are infectious diseases spread? Some diseases are spread through coughing, sneezing, physical contact, or exchange of body fluids. Some other diseases are spread through contaminated water or food, and others still spread to humans from infected animals or zoonotic disease. Pathogens are often spread by symptoms of disease such as sneezing, coughing, or diarrhea. In many cases, these symptoms are changes in host behavior that help pathogens spread and infect new hosts. If a virus infects only one host, that virus will die when the host's immune system kills it or when the host dies. For that reason, natural selection favors pathogens with adaptations that help them spread from one host to the other. Coughing, sneezing, and physical contact. Many bacteria and viruses that infect the nose, throat, or respiratory tract are spread by indirect contact. Coughing and sneezing releases thousands of tiny droplets that can be inhaled by other people. Those droplets also settle on objects such as doorknobs. If you touch those objects and then touch your mouth or nose, you can transfer the pathogens to a new home. The ability of a flu virus or a tuberculosis bacterium to cause a host to sneeze or cough is an adaptation that increases transmission of the pathogen from one host to the other. Other pathogens, including drug-resistant staphylococci that cause skin infections, can be transferred by almost any kind of body-to-body contact. They can also be transferred by contact with towels or certain kinds of sport equipment. So, how can we control diseases that can transmit by coughing, sneezing, and physical contact? The most important means of infection control is through and frequent hand washing. If you have a cold or flu, cover your mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze and wash your hands regularly. Exchange of body fluids. Some pathogens require specific kinds of direct contact to be transmitted from one host to the other. A wide range of diseases, including herpes, gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia, are transmitted by sexual activity. Therefore, these diseases are called sexually transmitted diseases. Sexually transmitted disease can only be completely prevented by avoiding sexual activity. HIV can be transmitted through blood or sexual contact. Contaminated water or food. Many pathogens that infect the digestive tract are spread through water contaminated with feces from infected people or other animals. Contaminated water may be consumed or it may carry pathogens onto fruits or vegetables. If those foods are eaten without being washed thoroughly, infection can result. Symptoms of these diseases often include serious diarrhea, another adaptation that helps pathogens spread from one host to another, especially in places with poor sanitation. Bacteria of several kinds are commonly present in seafood and uncooked meat, especially ground meat. So, the best way to control or avoid diseases that transmit by contaminated water or food is proper food storage and cooking. Zoonosis, the animal connection. What is zoonosis? Zoonosis is any disease that can be transmitted from animals to humans. Examples of zoonotic disease include mad cow disease, severe acute respiratory syndrome or SARS, West Nile virus, Lyme disease, Ebola, bird flu, and etc. Sometimes an animal carries or transfers zoonotic disease from an animal host to a human host. These animals are called vectors, and as the name indicates, they carry or transport the pathogen from one organism to another, but usually do not get sick themselves. Mosquitoes can also transfer West Nile virus between birds and humans in addition to Plasmodium species that causes malaria. In other cases, infection may occur when a person is bitten by an infected animal, consumes the meat of an infected animal, or comes in close contact with an infected animal's waste or secretions. Let's conclude today's lesson by answering the following lesson check questions. Question number 1. List the types of organisms that cause infectious disease. The answer is viruses, bacteria, single-celled eukaryotes or protists, fungi, and parasites. Question number 2. If a researcher introduced a suspected pathogen into many healthy hosts, but none of them became sick, what could this indicate? The sample answer may be, it likely indicates that the pathogen was not responsible for causing the disease in the question. Question number 3. What are the ways in which infectious diseases are spread? I hope all of you answered this one. Coughing, sneezing, physical contact, exchange of body fluids, contaminated water or food, and infected animals are some of the ways by which infectious diseases are spread. And the last question, how do vectors contribute to the spread of disease? The answer is, vectors spread disease by transporting or carrying pathogens from one host to another. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time, take a great care of yourself.